There's this really powerful and frankly alarming claim that's been making the rounds globally that there is a genocide happening against Christians in Nigeria. It's a story that absolutely grabs your attention, but it's also one that we really need to look at closely. So let's get into it and try to unpack what's actually happening on the ground. And boom, this headline from the New York Times really gets right to the heart of it all. You have this incredibly stark accusation of genocide, amplified on the world stage, but it seems to clash with a reality that is way, way more complicated. This is where our story begins.
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Today, we're going to try to peel back the layers of this whole story. We're going to use the data, we're going to use the on-the-ground reporting, and see if we can separate the political noise from the reality for millions of people in Nigeria.
Okay, so first things first, let's get one thing straight. The level of violence in Nigeria is absolutely staggering. It doesn't matter what label you put on it, the human cost here is just immense. Just to put a number on it, in 2025 alone, more than 8,000 civilians were killed. And here's the thing you've got to understand. That number includes both Christians and Muslims. This isn't some one-sided thing. It's a massive nationwide crisis that's hitting people from all faiths. So, with all that in mind, what did journalists actually find when they went to investigate these claims for themselves? Well, the New York Times sent its reporters to dig a lot deeper than the headlines. And yeah, what they found really throws a wrench in that simple genocide narrative. Their investigation came to the conclusion that this conflict isn't some deliberate, organized campaign to wipe out a religion. It's more like a perfect storm of all these deep, systemic problems boiling over at once. You've got a bunch of different things all colliding here. You've got climate change pushing nomadic herders who are often from the Fulani ethnic group further south looking for land for their animals. And that's leading to these violent clashes with farming communities over resources that are getting scarcer and scarcer, especially Nigeria's Middle Belt. Now throw in a whole lot of banditry, insurgent groups like Boko Haram, and a government that's really struggling to keep control. You can see how religion becomes a layer in this conflict, but it's definitely not the whole story. So this all leads us to the big debate. To figure out if the word genocide even fits here, we have to get really specific about what that word actually means. Words have power, you know? And that one, well, that one carries an enormous amount of legal and moral weight. See, the key, the absolute linchpin in the legal definition, is one little word: intent. Under international law, genocide isn't just about how many people have died. It's about proving that there was a specific, deliberate intent to destroy a particular group. So the real question becomes, is there proof of that intent in Nigeria? Well, let's put the rhetoric side by side with the data. On one hand, you've got the political claim of this huge war on Christians. But then you look at the data from a group called ACLED, and they only tracked 33 attacks in 2025 that were explicitly motivated by religion against Christians. And get this, reports consistently show that Muslims are actually the #1 victims of attacks by jihadist groups like Boko Haram. That really complicates the simple anti-Christian story, doesn't it? And here's another huge piece of the puzzle, this one from the International Crisis Group. They're saying that in a lot of these attacks, it's just impossible to know for sure what a victim's religion was. And that makes any claim about exact religiously motivated death tolls pretty shaky and really hard to verify. The fact that it's so hard to prove this is all about religion, well, that tells you there must be other powerful things going on, right? To really get what's happening, you have to look inside Nigeria itself. The conflict is all tangled up with the country's own politics, its ethnic divides, and its regional tensions. And right in the middle of all this, you have Nigeria's president, Bola Tinubu. He's a Yoruba Muslim from the southwest, and his administration has been dealing with all these accusations that it's favoring some ethnic groups over others. And that, as you can imagine, is just pouring fuel on the fire of distrust across the country. And these aren't just vague feelings. The accusations are really specific. Critics will point to what they see as the government being too lenient with the Fulani herders in those land clashes. They'll talk about an ethnic imbalance in who gets government jobs, or the anti-Igbo feelings that were stirred up during the 2023 elections, and just this general feeling of being left out that's felt by the Igbo people in the largely Christian Southeast. It got to a point where one senator, Alyun Dume, even coined a term for it: Yorubanization. He used it to describe this perceived ethnic favoritism in government appointments. It's a single word that kind of captures this widespread fear that powerful jobs are being handed out based on loyalty to the president's own Yoruba ethnic group, which, of course, completely undermines any sense of national unity. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. This whole narrative of a Christian genocide didn't just stay a story. It actually triggered direct, real-world international action with some really serious consequences. And things escalated fast. I mean, really fast. On Christmas Day 2025, the US announces military strikes. The very next day, reports from the ground are already questioning the official story. And then, just a few days later, the tragic result: retaliatory attacks on civilians.
And this led to a classic, devastating case of unintended consequences. The very actions that were meant to protect people might have actually made them more vulnerable. It seems the strikes just scattered the militants, who then turned around and unleashed their violence on nearby villages as revenge.
And the fallout just kept spreading. The genocide label and the military strikes that followed, they strained diplomatic relations, they cranked up the sectarian tension inside Nigeria, and they even raised the very real threat of cuts to essential humanitarian aid.
This New York Times opinion headline really puts a fine point on it, and it's a powerful argument. It basically suggests that pulling back aid, the very thing that helps people dealing with poverty and insecurity, which are the root causes of all this violence, could end up being more deadly to Christian communities than the militants themselves.
So we end up right back where we started, with a question. The story of violence in Nigeria is not some simple tale of good versus evil or one religion versus another. It's this tangled, complicated web of climate change, poverty, a struggling government, and ethnic tensions. And when all of that complexity gets flattened into a simple, politically useful slogan, it's the people on the ground, both Christian and Muslim, who always pay